Hello and welcome back. Today I am again exploring some books that I have checked out from my library. I am really enjoying this video series that I'm doing where I'm just trying different books out of the library. Last month I tried using a library recommendation service, and this time I'm checking out something that the librarians have recommended, but not specific books. Basically, I went and I found that my local library has a blog that they do, and I checked it out. And one of the articles that really drew my attention was one they had on almost winners from 2025. And this was a list of books that almost won major literary awards in 2025 that they suggested were probably just as good, or obviously pretty close to just as good as the winners, but would also probably be more available to check out from the library. And sure enough, they were correct. I found 8 books off of that list, or actually, I didn't find 8 books. I found 4 books off of that list, and I was able to check all of them out. I ended up checking out a total of 8 books because I also just compulsively and randomly and impulsively found 4 other books to add to that checkout list. So I spent a couple of minutes with each of the 8 books, and I have now narrowed it down to 4 that I want to basically try a chapter of or spend 15 minutes with to decide on which one I actually want to end up reading. And so that's how I do sort of this series where I focus on borrowing books instead of buying books. And like I said, I've really been enjoying it. So let me share with you the books that I have this go round. This is the part that you're probably most interested in. So the first book that I have is actually a very short book, and it is a work of nonfiction. It is a book of poetry. And I'm not normally a big fan of poetry. But this is Becoming Ghost, by the way. I didn't mention this. This was nominated and almost won a book award. I believe it was the National Book Award for Poetry. And let me tell you what drew me to this book. I think it's mainly that it is a book of poems about, oh no, I forgot that the back of this is covered up. Okay, so I had to go back and look it up because I wanted to get it right. The Becoming Ghost is basically a book of poetry that is told in own voices by Vietnamese people, and it goes through their experience basically of working as extras in the film Apocalypse Now. And so it reflects on their relationship, ownership of narrative, the movie Apocalypse Now, working as extras, the Vietnam War, all of those things. And I just found that really profound, partially because I've seen the movie Apocalypse Now multiple times, both times as part of film study courses. So I would be really interested in adding own voices into that conversation about that film. And this may be the book to do it. Headshot is a book that I had also seen and thought about giving it a try, but it just ended up never picking it up. And I became more interested in it when I learned that not only was it a series of interconnected short stories, more or less so, or interconnected stories, but I thought it was really interesting that it was interconnected stories about, I think it's 8 different young women who go to a boxing sort of competition. And as it pairs up each of the boxers to face off, you also learn a little bit more about their story. Book number 3 is a book that I just happened to see on an end cap or at the end of the aisle in the library as I was wandering through checking out the other books. And that was The Invincible by Stanislaw Lem. Now, I read Solaris a few months ago, and his name is the most prominent thing on this cover, and it was facing out like this. So honestly, that's why it caught my attention. After reading Solaris, I was interested in reading more of his work. And as soon as I saw this, I was like, it's right there. It's calling to me. Let me pick it up. And then once I got it home, I found out a little bit more about this book. This book in particular is about a space cruiser that's sent to an obscure planet, which already reminds me of the book Solaris. And they land there because they're going to check out what happened to a sister spaceship that has stopped responding to Earth signals. And once they get there, they find that there is, how do they put it? A form of life that has apparently evolved from autonomous self-replicating machines that may be the survivors of a robot war. I have recently really been enjoying science fiction and have read a couple of different stories that have to do with robots and robot wars and leftover machines, if you will. Also, the idea of self-replicating machines have come up. I know that I don't have a problem with Stanislaw Lem's writing style, so I thought this would be a good chance to try another one of his books. And then the final book that I'm going to be trying today, Colored Television by Danzy, Senna. And this is a book that gets into that whole like author and publisher sphere, but in this case, it's the production sphere of making a television show. I don't know much about it other than that, and that I have been wanting to try some of her writing. So I'm now going to go, I'm going to sit, well, go, I'm not going anywhere. I'm now going to sit and spend 15 minutes with each of these books and decide on which one I want to read just based on my initial impressions and like which one I'm most feeling drawn to. As I always mention, this doesn't mean that at some point in the future I won't read the other books on this list. It just means I'm not going to read the other ones right now. And that's the nice thing about the library is you can check out the books, you can spend a little time with them, and you can send them back to the library guilt-free knowing that somebody else is just going to get a chance to love them as well. So let me set my timer for 15 minutes. I think I'll just try them in the order that I showed them to you, which I feel like it's going to give me a very different taste of each of these books. Like Becoming Ghost is super small, so I'm expecting I'm not going to need to spend all 15 minutes with this. Headshot may be enough to get me through one of the girls' stories, which will be interesting. And then in both Colored Television and The Invincible, I'm thinking that this is just going to be enough to kind of get me through the exposition or opening of the stories. So I have no idea which one I'm going to end up being drawn to. I know I read the first poem in Becoming Ghost and I really was blown away by it, but also was kind of on the fence about the poetry and whether I want to read poetry. Headshot really surprised me. I really liked the writing style. I was really interested in where the first story was going to go, but I also felt like it might be a bit heavy. The Invincible like was pretty much just setup, so I didn't get too much into it, so couldn't make that strong of an opinion about it. And I felt the same about Colored Television. Either way, I'm excited to see what I end up with. Feel free to comment below and make your guess ahead of time if you want before watching the rest of the video. And let me go ahead and get started and see what I end up with. Okay, so I read just a few minutes. Normally I show you, but it was maybe a minute or two of Becoming Ghost. And I'm realizing I really don't want to like steamroll my way through this book. So if this ends up being the choice, I really want to take my time and read each of the poems and be able to spend the time sitting with it. So I'm going to kind of stop my reading of it there. I am really liking some of the poems, like already some of the meaning of what is being said is coming through. There's already been, I think I read like 4 poems, and one of them already had me thinking about the fact of like, what does it mean that for the sake of this film and a director, producer's desire to make it seem, as real as the real thing, which is war, that you're having your extras who are real people who went through the war kind of relive the war in the background of your movie. So definitely a lack of sensitivity is like the least that that is. And to get all of that across in a very short, I think it was 3 stanza poem, I think is really profound. So I can see how this almost won an award. I think to me, I'm simply amazed that it didn't win an award, but I guess there's the rest of the book to read. So we'll see how this holds up. There's a part of me that's like, this would be short enough that I'm tempted to read it with one of the other books, but I don't think I'll do that. I've reset my timer. I'm going to go ahead and in this case, I will do 15 minutes of headshot and see how that ends up working out. And sorry if there's a glare on some of these books, but they've got to stay protected for long-term use. Okay, so I have 5 minutes left, but I'm gonna stop there because I feel like I have a good feel for the writing style, and it's actually not something that I'm totally enjoying. And interestingly enough, and I think helpfully enough, this was not something that I would have realized just by reading the first couple of pages of the book. Not too shockingly. I mean, there's only so much you can figure out when you are reading just a page or two of the opening of a book. Anyway, back to Headshot. One of the things that I discovered when reading this first chapter in the book is that the writing in this book is broken up into a lot of different large paragraph breaks. So you won't just have a new paragraph to start a new idea, you have an actual paragraph break. And I'm finding that it's really breaking up the story because it's not even like it's going on to another thought with the same person. A lot of times you're even switching perspectives or going on to a completely different topic after every single paragraph, and more so in just the normal way that you would with just the end of a paragraph. And so I'm finding that it's feeling very jumpy and choppy to me, and I'm not sure that I'm going to like that over the course of an entire novel. Now, the writing is good. Some of the story that is being shared between the first two characters is very interesting. The setup that you have with the first two young women is you're getting the backstory of one of the women, where she is one of three sisters in a boxing family. So she is the youngest sister. Her two other sisters have boxed. They've gone to the same championship and they've also already done really well. She is now the youngest person in the family to go to this, not the youngest person in the family to go to the championship, but she is now the next and I think last child who would be able to go to this boxing championship, which is for women only. And so she's obviously facing a lot of, pressure there. The young lady that she is going up against, and one of them is Artemis and the other one is Alex. Is that what it is? Let me look again. Artemis and Andy. They have very similar names. So it's a little confusing. The other young woman is Andy, and she has had a very traumatic summer experience that she is coming off of and going into this boxing match with. And so she is struggling basically with survivor's guilt as she is going into this match. And so they both have different things that they're thinking about as they're fighting and that are maybe distracting them. So I really like the story setup and premise and the way these stories are going to be interchanged and involved during the match, because they're fighting as a lot of this information is being revealed to us. However, like I said, I'm not enjoying what feels like a very choppy writing style to me. So time to move on to somebody's writing style who I have tried before and at least found good, if not like my favorite. So we'll see how this book goes and whether or not I will need an entire 15 minutes to figure out where I'm going to place it in the ranking. And the reason I should add that I knew I could stop with reading Headshot is because I got to a point where I knew that I would prefer reading this book of poetry over Headshot as of right now. So we'll see where the Invincible falls in with that stack. I have 15 minutes on my timer here, and let's see if I can make it a whole 15 minutes this time. Okay, well, I finished my 15 minutes with The Invincible, and that went really well. I'm already very curious, even though what I've read isn't even the full opening of the story. Pretty much all that has happened so far, you walk with the crew through their waking up process, which is described scientifically fairly in depth, but otherwise fairly briefly as you go along. And you go through the steps very quickly of them landing on the planet, which seems to be some sort of dust-filled planet. And you get a little bit of a sense of what the atmosphere is like because they are following a sister ship. Obviously, the planet has been studied to some extent. They know something about it and the environment and what to expect in terms of the atmosphere and that kind of thing. However, as soon as the ship lands is when you start getting into the mystery of what's going on. And I'm already realizing that it's going to be very hard for me to decide where this would fit amongst the other two books that I've read. Right now, like, I don't want to say it's in a tie with Becoming Ghost, but they're such different books that it's hard to say that there's definitely one that I want to read over the other. So I'm hoping that colored television is going to help clarify things for me. But we'll see. I don't know. It might just make me more confused. Am I going to end up with a three-way tie? I don't know. But let me get into my next 15 minutes. Oh, I should also mention, if you've noticed at the beginning of the clips of me reading the books, that I'm very quickly going through the first couple of pages. It's because, like I've mentioned, I've already read the first page or two of each of these books, so I'm just sort of skimming it to get back to the place where I left off. Okay, so colored television. Did this help break any sort of ties? I don't think so. I think I'm more confused now than ever. So again, I knew with this book that the first 15 minutes would just give me enough time to sort of start getting a flavor for the book. And it's opening very interestingly. It kept my attention for all 15 minutes with no problem. It's definitely getting into the story of Jane and Linny and their family with their two kids. One of them who is an older daughter, and the younger one, their younger son, Finn, who seems to be getting diagnosed with various, I don't know what, because they haven't shared with us yet, but seems to be getting various diagnoses for his behaviors that seem understandable is the way the mother puts it, but not typical is the way they're being told he is behaving. And so that is going on as both Jane and Linny are trying to figure out their own job situation. They both teach at different colleges. He teaches art and is a painter. She teaches writing, I believe. I don't think it's said what she's taught, what she teaches yet, but she is trying to be a writer. She had her first book promoted quite a few years ago, and that did fairly well, but she has been sort of caught up in writing her second book. Now, I know at some point television itself starts to come into play, and so I don't know if it's she ends up turning that book into a television show or what, because I'm not that far into the book yet. So it definitely seems like it's going to be an interesting book about, writing, race, family life, all those types of things. And gosh, yeah, what do I want to read? That is the question. So I can say I've at least eliminated one book, which is Headshot. That was definitely the one that kept the least of my attention, but it leaves me with these three as choices. And it's a hard choice. I think I'm gonna eliminate Becoming Ghost, because I feel like that's something that if I really want to read this month, I have time to slip it in. So I think I'm going to focus on one of these two books. Now, the question is, which one? Colored Television seems like it's going to be really interesting, but The Invincible feels like it's going to be kind of mysterious and exciting. I think I'm going to go with Colored Television. And I think the reason why is that I already feel like there's a lot in The Invincible that is similar to Solaris. And I feel like I'm like not going to forget that book. I mean, I'm probably going to add, honestly, at least Becoming Ghost and The Invincible to my TBR list that I keep track of. But I don't know. I think it's really just because there's a part of me that's concerned that The Invincible is just going to feel too much like a book that I've already read, where I feel like Colored Television is already doing things and discussing different issues that I enjoy and that I haven't read recently. I also feel like I've been reading a decent amount of science fiction lately, so I'm not too upset about switching to a different category. And I've also wanted to try this author before, where I have tried Stanislaw Lem before. So yeah, this is what I'm going to go with. So I'm going to continue reading this book. I will probably check in with you a couple of times, and then I will review this book at the end of it, unless I decide to review it in a different video. I don't know why I've never decided how I'm going to do that. I'll review it in this video. So I'm going to talk to you at length about Colored Television, and yeah, I'll check in with you as I go, and then I will check in probably twice before I come back with my final review on the book. So I guess I'll see you in a day or so. Okay, hello, I'm back. And clearly, since my last check-in, I've done some decorating. So again, let me know what you think. I'm open to suggestions. So far, the winning suggestion has been a suit of armor. So we'll see how that goes, but this is probably not the permanent painting that is going to be here. It's just one from somewhere else in my house that I put here because I wanted to see what size painting I wanted here, and this is definitely the size. I don't know that this is the animal, though I absolutely love this painting. Anyway, you're not here to hear about that. You're here to hear my thoughts about Colored Television. Well, surprise, surprise, I didn't finish it. It's a DNF. This is my first DNF of this challenge, and I would not have expected it to be this book. So let me explain why I ended up DNFing this book. I would not say this book is good or bad. Honestly, I didn't finish it, and I typically don't review books that I haven't finished because I just don't feel like I know enough of the story to be able to tell you whether it's good or bad. And that is particularly true of this book. I don't think I made it past page maybe 20 or 30 in this book. I could not get into it. I don't know why. I don't know if it was just the right story at the wrong time, or if it was just the pacing of the story, or just not a great introduction. Whatever it was, it really just wasn't resonating with me, wasn't keeping my interest. It took me a couple of days just to get through the first part that I did, despite the fact that I had already read 15 minutes at the beginning of the book. I must have made it past page 30. Yeah, okay, I'm seeing stuff on page 40 that I've read. That was seeming really wrong. Okay, I think I made it closer to page 60, but still, it's a 270 page book. It normally would only take me like 2, maybe 3 days to read this, and I didn't want to do it. And I decided rather than pushing myself to finish this book for the sake of this video, I thought it would be more honest to come back and say this didn't work. Because to me, that fits the whole idea of trying it before you buy it. And I'm glad I tried it in this method because it gives me the freedom to put it down, to not have book buying guilt or anything like that, and to know that if I want to try it again at some point, I can, because I just have to check it out at the library again. So as awkward as that is, that's where I'm ending it with this. I do still have the other books that I tried. So I had even thought about going on and trying like my runner-up and trying the Invincible or even one of the other four, or reading all four of them until I found one that I really felt like finishing. And I still felt like that wasn't the point of this, that it really is just an opportunity to try one book. I have other things off my shelf that I plan on reading, and I didn't want to push those off just for the sake of finishing some book that I borrowed from the library. Like I said, I can check them back out. So I am going to end the video here, but I am still looking forward to trying this again next time. And I already saw something on my library's website that has me excited and has a variety of different plans for me going on for the rest of the year. So yeah, like and subscribe if you liked this video, if you're enjoying this series, and I'll continue to share with you what I am trying instead of buying, what I'm borrowing from the library, and all of those things. And trust me, it's about to get a lot more adventurous. So that's it for me. Let me know what the last thing was you checked out from your library and whether or not you finished it, and I'll talk to you next time. Bye.